Millennial series. We're going to give just a few moments for people to just join in. If you are visiting for the first time, welcome, welcome. If you have been here before, good to see you again. Go ahead and do us a favor. You know that like and that share button? Go ahead and hit that right now so that we can share the wealth and the knowledge on tonight. We are talking about faith and finances, okay? And I know that is a topic that a lot of people are wanting to talk about. So if you have your questions, go ahead and start thinking about it because we are going to get to it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Just a few more seconds. I'm going to introduce our speaker and we're going to get started with our faith, social justice, and finance talk on tonight. We are super duper excited. Welcome. So we're about 60 seconds in. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Minister Christian, and I am so honored to be here with you on tonight. This is our second series. Last week, we had someone talking about securing the vote, and this week we are talking about finances. So our guest today is none other than the Matt Aaron. He is also my partner in life, and we love doing ministry together. He is the owner of Aaron Financial, and he definitely loves to talk about how to create a legacy, not only for your life, but for the generations to come. So once again, if you have questions, go ahead and think about those because we are going to be interactive. I do want to shout out the millennials at First Baptist Church of Vienna. Give yourselves a round of applause. We see you. We thank you. We thank you so much for the Pastor Vernon C. Walton, who had this grandiose idea and is really serving his millennials and millennials in the DMV area. So without further ado, we are going to let Matt Aaron kick off. I have some questions. You have some questions, and we are going to have a wonderful time together. Amen. So go ahead.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to be connected with you all today. We're really going to try to make this as interactive as possible. But I'll just kick it off with just giving you some perspective, setting the stage for our conversation today. When we think about wealth, wealth is the process of building wealth is really about being intentional and staying connected with your purpose and what you're trying to build. If you don't have a purpose, if you don't have a vision for what you're trying to build, you can't develop a process because you don't know where you're going. It's like trying to get to a destination, putting in the GPS the wrong address. Well, if you don't know where you're going, you can't get to your destination. So we really want you to make sure you're spending time staying focused on your purpose, your vision, which will then give you at least a guide or a path and some clarity on which path is right for you. Because the process of wealth building, there's no one path. Everybody's journey is going to be different. Everybody's starting point is going to be different, but it's extremely important for you to be very intentional around defining your own journey and then trying to go get the information for you to go in and pursue your vision and making it happen. All right, so there's some core tenets that we really want you to really grab onto as it relates to finances. The first one is effective cash flow management. So a fancy way of saying budgeting. Cash flow management on a micro level and a macro level is so critical. On a micro level, we're talking about just the day-to-day budgeting, the day-to-day expenses, the things that you're doing and spending money on a day-to-day. And then on a macro level, those are the major purchases. Those are the decisions as it relates to buying a house, buying a car, things that are very much more sort of mid to long-term decisions that is really hard to adjust and pivot from. That doesn't mean you can't course correct, but it just means that it's very much more of a commitment than probably your, hey, I'm buying too many coffees every day. So we want you to be very intentional about that. Then the second area is managing uncertainty. There's a lot of things in life that we just can't plan for. Okay. There's the things that, just think about it this year, right? Coronavirus. Nobody came into 2020 thinking that coronavirus was going to be a thing. right? So if you weren't prepared for the uncertainty, then you had to effectively make some decisions that could have been disconnected from your actual vision. So it's the known unknowables. I can promise you 2021 is going to be something else, right? 2021 is going to be something else. But what we don't know is what it is, but we do know it's going to be something. So why not be prepared for it? All right. The next thing is investing your money. We got to make sure that we're not afraid to have our money growing for us, right? We have to make sure that we are very intentional about where we're actually warehousing our dollars so that they can grow not only for our short-term goals, midterm goals, and long-term goals, but for generations to come. And then the last thing is taxes. Okay, we have to be very intentional around minimizing the amount of taxes that we pay, not only because we want to be intentional about where the money's going, it should be going into our communities, but if you know how to manage taxes and be a little bit more efficient about where you're warehousing your money, you can actually regain and reclaim and get some control over your dollars. Okay, so we're gonna, have a more open dialogue. We're gonna go a little bit deeper. Minister Christian is definitely going to guide us in this conversation.
Wonderful. So I know the very big thing that a lot of people have been talking about, not just during quarantine and COVID, but just life in general, talk about budgeting. So I want you to walk us through, how do we create a budget for our lifestyle, something that works, that allows us to be mindful of what we're spending and also saving. So what are some essentials to creating an ideal budget for a household?
Absolutely. So I would say first things first is paying yourself first, right? You got to pay yourself first. We typically find a way to make it work with what we have. That's why when we make more money, we end up getting more things. If we had less money, we would actually spend less money. So you have to be very clear about how much you want to save on a monthly basis for the goals that you have. And then once you define that number and you pay yourself first, and then you pay God first, then you're able to say, okay, what do I have left over? What are the essentials? Okay, we got to make sure we pay our essentials. You got to have a roof over your head. You got to make sure you got food on the table. These essential things, and some of your expenses are going to be fixed where every month it's the same thing. All right, we know what rent is next month. It's not a surprise, right? We know what student loan payments are going to be there tomorrow. It's not a surprise. So you need to know, okay, what are my fixed expenses? What's my savings commitment? And then anything in between is what we have to have the self-discipline around making the decisions daily on a micro level to think about what values do I have what values do I have? And does the dollar that I'm spending today directly align with my values and goals? Okay. And if the answer is no, then you might want to take a second thought about that expense. Now, we're not saying that you have to not have fun. We're not saying that. And we want you to shift your perspective. Don't think about it like a budget, because budget feels restrictive. I want you to think from an expansion mindset. I want you to think, okay, how do I go find the dollars, figure out where the leakage is, take that money and go repurpose it to get closer to your vision? So it's a mindset shift versus thinking about it from a restrictive perspective. Think about it from, how do I expand and grow? And then you'll actually be more fulfilled than the instant gratification that you're choosing that might not be congruent with your goals.
Now, I know that budgeting is important. I've never really had an issue with that. But for that person that may be saying, like, how do I know that I am in my means and I'm not trying to keep up with the Joneses? Like, right. What systematically can we do? Is this, we're visiting the budget once a month? Is it having an accountability partner? Like, how do we know that we are in our means and that we stay in our means?
Absolutely. So I would say first things first is think about your own journey and not compare it to anybody else. Okay. So you have to stay in your own lane. All right. One of the biggest things that have been, one of the things that have been super helpful for me, and I'm a certified financial planner. One thing that has been super helpful for me is having an accountability partner. Like Minister Christian said, having this accountability partner is so critical because somebody has to hold your feet to the fire when it comes to making the decisions, the tough decisions. When there's somebody else pulling you in a different direction, you need to have somebody who has the same purpose as you. Okay. I'm thankful I have Christian to help me with that, right? To make sure that the decisions I'm making daily are aligned with our purpose. Now, if you don't have that type of person in your life, it doesn't have to be a partner per se, but it can be a financial advisor. It can be a parent. It could be your best friend. So go find that person who can help you to hold you accountable. The second thing is understanding where you're trying to go. And I think the fact that, sometimes we don't have a job description for our money. It kind of just like flows out there and I'm guilty of it. That used to be me. I didn't have a job description for my money. So you know what the default was? To go spend it. But once I developed a job description and it was like, okay, that job for that dollar is to pay this thing. That job for that dollar is to go invest in that so that we can go buy this property. That dollar for this, the job. So once you're intentional and you actually keep a track record of what you're doing, and that clarity just makes you more conscious and aware, that's where I think that expansion opportunity comes from.
All right. So I think a good takeaway from that was every dollar that you have should have a job description, whether it's saving, whether it's gas, whether it's food, eating out, that should have a budget as well, something that's helped me. So I think that's really, really good. If you're watching, feel free to type in your questions. We definitely want to get to as many as possible. One thing that I hear a lot in society is people saying, I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy for my family, for those who are coming behind me. Exactly, from a financial perspective, what does that mean? And what are some practical things that we can do to set up our future generations with that legacy that we're wanting?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah.
Legacy, it's so big. And I think legacy is an opportunity.
Okay.
I think sometimes when we think legacy, it feels so far, but you got to bring the future to the present when you start making decisions. So if legacy and generational wealth is important for you, that means it requires sacrifice. Okay. You can't do the same thing and think that you're going to accomplish something different, right? So if you watched your parents or your family not give you the opportunity of legacy, that means maybe you should go find the information and do something a little bit different. And now that might mean, they sacrificed to get you to a certain level income wise, right? Maybe it was giving you the opportunity to go to school, get an education, whatever it is. But I think sometimes we have to recognize our human life value, right? Because our income is the biggest asset that you have. So how do I make sure I protect my income,
right.
which then gives me the opportunity to save, pay my debt, and then I need to have another level of sacrifice above and beyond my goals. I have to be willing to put a little bit more away so that the next generation can arrive a lot different. So that might mean maybe I got to take out an insurance policy, right? Knowing that if I passed away tomorrow, if generational wealth is important for me, I need to make sure that happens. I know that if I want to have wealth for the next generation, that means I can't not only be on track for retirement and then be like, I'm good. I got to say I'm on track for retirement. And then now what's next? So just going above and beyond the complacency of being okay for our future goals.
Wonderful. So one way that I just heard was insurance. So walk us through this insurance thing, because I know that the Rockefellers, this is definitely a method that they have used to pass on to generation to generation to generation. So walk us through, what does this insurance mean? Tell us the different types of insurance that we can be thinking about and investing in, term, permanent. Break it down to the audience today. And if you have questions, go ahead and type those questions in the box. We want to get to it. Anything about finances, money, type it in the box and go ahead and share this broadcast if you're watching. So let's talk insurance.
All right. So let's talk insurance from a life insurance perspective. Okay. There's two main types of life insurances. One is term insurance, which is like renting a house, right? You can, rent for a certain period of time. There's nothing wrong with renting. Okay, let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with renting. All right, for the right person, renting makes sense. And you can get a lot of coverage for a very low cost. And over time, that landlord, which is the insurance company, might raise the rent up on you a little bit, which is fair because as you get older, there's a higher probability that someday something's going to happen. Now, permanent insurance is like owning a house. Okay, so you own the house, you pay a certain amount of money. And over time, some of that money goes towards the permanent coverage because it's not a question of if you die anymore. It's a question of when you die. Whereas term insurance, it was for a specific term. So the insurance company has to put some money aside, and then they will allow you to build up equity within the policy. And depending on the design of the policy and the insurance company will dictate the nature of how it works. But the idea is that it's permanent. So we all know we're going to go someday.
Right.
So if I make the sacrifice of paying a certain amount of money every single month, knowing that at some point somebody's going to get this money, that's generational wealth guaranteed. But sometimes we don't have the delayed gratification, right? But the cool part about permanent is that you can also leverage it while you're alive and, and certainly use it as an asset. So one of the things that's pretty cool that, Christian and I learned is the difference between the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers. So the Vanderbilts, which we've heard of them, okay, but they have no money right now. They have no wealth because they didn't think about how do we put a plan in place that's generational. They went through one generation and then it was gone. But the Rockefellers, they did the appropriate things. They got the appropriate insurances. They did the appropriate estate planning. So when the kids passed away, every single time a kid passed away, they refilled the trust with money from the insurance. And then they leveraged the insurance to also invest in things like real estate, etc. So what's pretty cool is the Rockefellers still to this day, there's about 100 Rockefellers still earning income every day from a long time ago. All right. And to give you some perspective, the Rockefellers in today's dollars have more money than Jeff Bezos. Okay. They are in the present dollars, they have more money. Okay. Now they still give money away, millions of dollars a year, the Rockefellers. Why? Because of the intentional decisions that they made.
That's good. And honestly, I didn't grow up learning about life insurance, but as Matt stated, if you're wondering how do I build generational wealth, make sure you are investing, as he stated, in insurance that you can pass on to your generations. Now, one other thing is that I hear a lot is like trust fund babies. Like what does the trust fund, when should you set it up? Who gets it? Let's talk about that.
Definitely. Well, there's many vehicles as it relates to estate planning. And that's just, what do you want to happen, in the event of your passing or you become incapacitated? So if you can't make your own decisions, what do you want to happen? Who's paying your bills? Those are the types of decisions that happen with estate planning. But another thing is, if you're not here tomorrow, what do you want to happen with those legacy assets? So in the event that, let's say you did a really good job at saving money, investing, building wealth, the trust allows you to protect those assets in the event of a lawsuit. Those trusts allow you to protect those assets from even the kids or the people who are inheriting the money, because you can put rules around it, right? So one of the things that, Christian and I believe is, how do we develop a plan that actually allows our kids to have the values that we had and the discipline that we had based on the rules we set in the trust? So if something happens, we want to make sure that we're not only just passing on the wealth, but we give them the guide to actually steward it, and then who's helping them to guide it. So if you don't have that in place, then you're basically giving money away. And we know, just think about it. Imagine you got $1 million when you graduated from college. What decisions would you have made? Was you responsible enough to make key decisions? Probably not. So these are the things that we want to make sure that we're being intentional about.
Good. All right, guys. So I'm gonna ask more questions. Once again, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the box. I saw Pastor Walton. He joined us a while back. Hello to him. He is the visionary of this series. And also, there will be a link that will be posted. It's a Bitly link. You can go ahead. It's a Connect card. Takes a few seconds to fill out. If you are interested in learning more about this ministry, getting connected to a wonderful body of believers who are on fire, then you can definitely sign that card. So as we're talking about this series being a millennial-led series for all generations, let's talk about student loans. Now, I know student loans is one thing that a lot of people probably in this audience can relate to. So what are some ways that you tell your clients to navigate this world of student loans? If you have a whole lot of money, should you just pay the student loans off? Like, what is the method to that madness?
Absolutely. So it really depends, right? And really, that's the funny thing about financial planning. The answer is it depends.
Okay.
So you have to recognize a few things. One, what type of debt do I have? Is it federal student loans? Is it private student loans? Mm-hmm. I need to know, what are the interest rates? Are the interest rates high or are they relatively low? Meaning, are they high to the point where I really can't invest the money and then beat that interest rate? So I might as well just go ahead and get the guaranteed interest rate. The question is what's my risk tolerance? Am I even going to invest the money aggressively enough to outperform it? If I'm a conservative person and I have a low risk tolerance, then for me, maybe I might want to go ahead and just pay it off. But that doesn't mean it's a one size fits all answer. You got to go and say, okay, let me look at these different things. So the first thing is, all right, if it's a federal student loan, am I in a position where maybe I can take advantage of public service loan forgiveness?
Okay.
All right. That's a place where if you work at a nonprofit and you're in federal government loans and you're under the right type of loans, there's a unique, structure or loan program you got to be under to qualify for that. That might be one way. You look at paying the minimum to take full advantage of that. However, maybe you can create a little side account, because what if public service loan forgiveness doesn't end up happening? Did you have a backup plan? The other things you might think about is, can I refinance my loans? If I'm in the private space, maybe I want to refinance the loans, get the interest rate lower. So now I just, boom, got a guaranteed return, right? So if I take my interest rates from 7% to 3%, that means I got a 4% return back in my pocket. So that's a unique way where you might now be able to take that same payment you were making before and hit the principal more and more every time. Or you might take that money, if you're more of an aggressive person, you're comfortable with risk, maybe you take that money and invest it. And then from those investments you make, now you go and then you pay off the loans. So it depends, but you've got to be intentional. Just don't go out there and just leave the money there and think like, oh, okay, one day it's just going to magically boom, voila, and then disappear. Because I know that's the thought process a lot of us have, but it's the wrong one. Come up with the plan.
Okay, that's really, really good. So you mentioned refinancing. So you can refinance your loans, you can refinance your car, your home. When should one think about refinancing? I was just in a conversation about refinancing my car, which will take my interest rate down, and essentially I'll be saving money. So when should one begin to think about doing the refinancing?
Well, you should always be thinking about it.
Okay.
I think the refinancing discussion really happens when two things. One, what are the interest rates in the marketplace? Like, is there a way where you can go borrow money at a lower cost, guarantee return back in your pocket? Is there a way for you to achieve better returns somewhere else? Then maybe we call that interest arbitrage. Maybe getting that extra percentage somewhere else will actually create a huge opportunity for you to actually, do better. And that, again, it depends, but you got to, again, be intentional.
Okay, wonderful. So this entire series is entitled Faith justice, and then we insert the topic. So tonight, of course, we're talking about finances, but as we're talking about social justice, we have an election that is coming up in little to no time. If you're watching, I hope you voted. I mean, if you haven't voted, I hope you've registered, you know where your precinct is, so on and so forth. But how will this upcoming election affect our finances, if any?
So it's unique in the sense that it really, it depends. And it depends from a perspective of what lens are you looking from? Are you looking from the lens of the market? Well, I can tell you that when you look back at all the elections, the market really did not have a major outcome in terms of who wins and gets in the market really doesn't impact the long-term returns of your investment. So don't make any emotional decisions. One. The second thing is understanding that, depending on who comes in the market, that might change some of the tax rates. So depending on your tax brackets or where you fall income-wise, you might want to strategically make some decisions to reposition assets in a time before taxes go up. I'm not a tax advisor, full disclosure. We help people with tax planning, but we are not tax advisors. But one of the things that we really want to make sure is that people are not making irrational decisions based on the noise that they're hearing in the marketplace. So if you're hearing people talking about selling their portfolio or making decisions based on the market, don't follow suit. And if the market does create some volatility, which it probably will, because people hate uncertainty. So if the market does go down, don't sell anything. If you don't sell anything, you don't lose, but eventually it's going to come back up. All right, we know that. And so if we know that to be true, our economy continues to figure it out like we did. Coronavirus happened, people lost jobs, unfortunately, people passed away, unfortunately, but we still have to figure out a way to live tomorrow. So that really is what drives the market. It's less around, the realities of what's happening in the world, but more around emotions. So you just got to stick to, stay strong and don't make irrational decisions.
Okay, so no irrational decisions. So you talked about the stock market. As he was referring to the market, guys, he was talking about the stock market. So when should I invest in the stock market? So if I have an extra $200, I have an extra $5, if I have $10,000, because I have friends who call me up and say, well, I have just a little extra left on my check. I invested in the stock market. They took it out once things started to drop. So give us some education on some do's and don'ts when it comes to the stock market.
Absolutely. I guess first things first is making sure you have a contingency plan. Mm-hmm. If you invest money tomorrow, but if a bill showed up tomorrow and you ain't got money to pay for it, then you probably should not be investing in the market, because the stock market is not viewed as a short-term thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You have to have a long-term view and perspective. The moment you start putting yourself in a position where you got to make short-term decisions, that's where you put yourself at risk, because the risk of the market is really not the market per se. It's your behaviors and when you actually need money. So if you got to actually invest $1 tomorrow and then an emergency comes up and you got to sell, but if the market's down and you got to sell, you took a loss. So Warren Buffett's first rule when it comes to investing is don't lose money. Christian, you know what rule number 2 is? Follow rule number 1. All right. So we need to make sure that we don't put ourselves in that position, because the additional return is not worth the loss. So if you can't afford the loss, not because of the market, but because you put yourself in a position to take a loss, that's your fault. So don't put yourself in that position. The second thing is diversification. Okay. You need to make sure that you have a broad diversification of investments, not just in one sector. A lot of times we invest in individual companies and we think that because we're investing in different companies, mm-hmm. that we're diversified. Mm-hmm. But that's not actually true, because those companies can actually behave in the same space. So you got to make sure you're diversified across different asset classes, which is a different area in the market, and then make sure you have a disciplined process to make sure you're rebalancing and continuing to stay the course. Buy low, sell high, never sell low, because now you took a loss permanently which it could have been temporary.
Awesome. Buy low,
So
sell high. All right. So we have a question from the audience from Victoria. Hello, Victoria. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the box. Victoria's question is, how early should we start putting into a retirement fund? Really good question. Is there a certain amount which we should be putting in? So let's talk about retirement.
Yeah. So
Good question.
The answer to that is yesterday, right? Like you should have been saving for retirement yesterday. And now, if you didn't start saving yesterday, that's okay.
It's okay.
There's nothing like now. Okay. We got to make a conscious effort to delay, because we always find a way to make it work. Like I said earlier, right? And the beauty of like retirement vehicles or anything that makes you save money purposely, intentionally with a long-term view, we tend to make it work, right? So definitely don't, if you see your employer is going to give you free money, don't leave free money on the table. Okay. It blows my mind when I see people leaving free money on the table. Go get it. Go after it. Go get the free money. And then after you get the free money, then you assess, okay, where's the next place I should be maybe putting $1? Okay. Is it my emergency fund? Is it, but retirement is the most expensive thing you ever going to do. Mm-hmm. And we
say more about that.
So it's the most expensive thing you ever going to do, because think about it. Let's put it in perspective, right? Let's say you want to retire at, I'm going to even say, let's say average age 67 or 65, right? Mm-hmm. If you retire at 65, the average, age for a millennial today is probably around 95 years old in terms of life expectancy. So from 65 to 95, okay, 30 years, you have to create a paycheck, right? That's 360 paychecks you got to create from the last 30 years. Think about that. So that means you can't even just save it and then put it in a mattress. You had to save it and then put it somewhere for it to grow so it can create enough money to last you for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where back in the day, you used to be able to work at one employer, get your pension, Social Security, you saved a little bit of coins, and you were good. The world we live in today, that's not the case. Mm-hmm. You got to be very intentional about putting some dollars away so you don't look up 10 years from now and say, man, because we have clients that are 45 that say, they wish they would have done this, or clients that was 55 that say when they were 45, they wish they would have done this. So if you're in your 20s, mm-hmm. Wow, you got the opportunity to choose to show up differently than maybe the last generation. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we got to make sure we're doing that and take care of your stuff first before you try to take care of other people.
That's good. So what are some types of retirement accounts that are out there? I know we have like the Roth and, 401k. So what right. are some ones that they can start looking into?
Yeah. So first things first is starting with your employer and seeing what they have. Mm-hmm. So if you work at a non-for-profit, you might have a 403B plan. Some people call it a TSA plan, a tax sheltered annuity plan. Mm-hmm. If you work in the government, federal government, you might have a TSP plan, which is thrift savings. It's just like the 401k. If you work in a for-profit space, most likely you have a 401k plan. And then the last one, if you're in, well, not the last one, but one other one, if you're in a nonprofit space, you might have a 403B plan. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you can generally put dollars in pre-tax or Roth. Okay. And the difference is if you put money in pre-tax, essentially you're choosing to get taxed less today, which feels good. And then it's going to grow, and then you're going to take out money tax, and then you're going to have to pay taxes later. Mm-hmm. But you got to ask yourself, where am I at today relative to where I'm going and where I'm trying to be income-wise? So if you think your income is going to go up in the future, maybe you want to just get taxed today, pay the taxes. If you think about the level of debt we're in as a country, $27 trillion.
Ooh, that's a lot.
27 trillion?
Yeah.
So would you rather pay your taxes today and know that in the future, whatever tax rates may be, you now get to choose the power of choice? But if you put the money in pre-tax. Now you're giving the government the opportunity to choose for you. So, now there's no one size fits all. Again, it depends, but I really want you to just make sure you're connecting with, perhaps a tax advisor or some type of advisor to help guide you.
That's good. So in connecting with the tax advisor or financial planner, when should one reach out? Or, is it for people that only have tons of money? Is it for people that are just starting out their job and their careers? Like, how do you know when you're ready to begin a relationship with a financial planner or advisor to really help navigate this generational wealth?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of trying to find the right advisor for you. And then also, are you serious? Because there's nothing like going to an advisor and wasting their time because you're not serious. It's like going to show up for practice on a basketball game. It's like trying to go out for tryouts, right? But you're not serious about actually getting on a team and then winning a game. Mm-hmm. So I want you to make sure that you're serious when you actually go to that advisor, because it's going to cost you money. And it's nothing like wasting money. It's one thing to actually not have an advisor and not have no money, but then to go to an advisor and then waste money, right? That doesn't make sense. So just make sure you're ready to go and show up appropriately and intentional, because they can't solve your problems. They can only guide you.
Okay. But what about income brackets?
So income brackets, there's an advisor for everybody. Mm-hmm. You just have to find an advisor that has a model that fits your income. So there's some advisors where you can go and you can just pay to talk to them for an hour or two. Mm. Maybe that's what you need. There's some advisors where you pay for a financial plan and they go in, but you got to ask yourself, am I a do-it-yourselfer person? Am I somebody that's going to be proactive? There's some advisors, if you don't got enough money and you don't have enough income, they're probably not going to work with you. And that's okay. That should mean that's not the advisor for you. Mm-hmm. And then there are going to be some that if you don't have enough money in terms of assets, they're not going to talk to you. Mm-hmm. And then maybe that's not your advisor. So you just got to go find who's out there for you, because the person's out there, but you can't go talk to one person and then give up. You got to go talk to one person. Okay, that's not the right fit. Go to the next one.
It's like a relationship.
It's literally like a relationship.
It's a financial relationship. Well, this is good. I had a friend who submitted this question.
Okay.
If you have any questions, if you're watching, go ahead. We probably have time for like 1 to 2 more questions. So I want to make sure your voice is heard. So I have a question I have a friend who asked about areas of improvement. Mm. So I know that you've had over 5,000 meetings in your financial lifetime. Mm-hmm. Where do you see your clients go wrong? Where do you see people go wrong? Let's think about the average person who's watching today, going through COVID, maybe retired, maybe not. Like what are just some general things that you can share with people to really make sure they are heading in the right direction?
The number one thing, here, and this is going to be so underwhelming. Okay. It's managing cash flow. Because we are quick to want to say, where can I go and invest my money so that I can go get the quick return, because I don't want to do the work. The financial opportunity and the leakage and the return is right in your bank account. When you get paid and money that's coming in and cash flow and expenses that's going out, it's so critical for you to understand what's happening. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you could go years, and I've seen it, you can go years without not looking at your cash flow because you have the fear of knowing what's actually going on. So we try to run to investing. You can't invest your way to just going and be wealthy.
Mm-hmm, that's good.
You got to do the heavy lifting of actually saving the money and then investing, and then that creates the wealth. But trust me, you can't invest your way to wealth. You got to do the hard work, which is saving and then investing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. So I think the cash flow thing is really important. Goes back to the budget. Is there anything else that stands out with your clients? I know the stock market was one, investing.
Just I'd say maybe over leverage, right? Like if you don't have the money and you can't pay for it in cash, there's nothing wrong with leverage, okay? There's nothing wrong with debt. I'm a fan of leverage.
Mm-hmm.
But if you leverage yourself to the point where you can't even pay your bills, then that means you're over leveraged. If you're leveraged in a way where you're letting the bank make money on you through interest,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't actually go and make more money from somebody else or something else, then that means you're over leveraged. So there's nothing wrong with leverage or debt if you're going to go make more money. But if you're going to just pay the bank and make them more and more wealthy, that's not the answer. So if you can't pay for it twice, you probably can't afford it.
Ooh, that's stepping on some toes, because I remember when I was in college, just swipe the credit card, it'll be fine. But that's what we do even with some of our credit cards. We don't think about that interest. Like, what are some rules around that too?
So
like what, 30%, right? Is it 30%? Keep your credit card under 30%?
Man, you're good. Listen, Chris,
I'm trying.
Yeah, 30% utilization is the sweet spot, right? You don't want to be using more than 30% of your credit. You also want to make sure that when you look at the debt, that you look at it from a perspective of making a decision that actually is real. Sometimes we the thing about credit cards is that when we swipe it, I always say anybody is willing to agree to something that they don't have to pay for it today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you are going to have to pay for that thing someday.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you swipe the card, think about it. Can I pay for it today? If I can't pay for it today, then I probably shouldn't swipe the card.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that. I think there's one rule that we can walk away with tonight. Well, I thank you all so much. I'm looking at the chat. I think we got to all the questions. If you are viewing and you want to stay connected to this community, being First Baptist Church of Vienna, there is a Connect card that was posted in the chat earlier. I just want to shout out some of the millennials that are part of this amazing church. We have Chanel Williams. Shout out to Victoria Hairston, and also Antipus Roar. Thank you so much for showing up and leading and serving your unique and amazing community. Also, shout out to the pastor, Pastor Vernon C. Walton, who is definitely the visionary behind this series. Next week, we will be here, same time, same place, and we will be talking about faith, social justice, and millennials. If you have questions, feel free to DM them on this Facebook account. And if you have further questions, you can follow Matt Aaron. Where can they follow you with finances?
Yeah, you can follow me at I am Matt Aaron on all social medias or LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So just a reminder, as we get ready to close out, God requires us to be good stewards of our finances. So this is not something that we're talking about just to, secure the bag, as millennials say. This is something that is biblical, because we are to be good stewards of whatever God gives us, whether it's $10, $1, 50 cents, or 50 million, whatever you have and whatever your bank account says today, just make sure that you are being a good steward. Well, I hope and pray that this was a blessing. Once again, I am Minister Christian. Thank you so much for joining us, and make